You, out, now. The words cracked through the open kitchen like a cleaver hitting bone. Every pair of hands froze mid-motion, knives hovering over herbs, ladles dripping sauce back into steel pots. And there she was, standing in the doorway, framed by the warm spill of dining room light. A black woman in a soft pink silk midi dress, waist cinched just enough to suggest elegance without restriction. Low ponytail, smooth and deliberate, catching the reflection of overhead track lights. Small pearl studs, a slender rose gold watch, nude pointed heels that didn't clack, but whispered over the tiles. She didn't move, didn't blink. Head chef Marco Vance stepped forward, a stained apron tied over his broad frame, the scent of charred rosemary and something burnt trailing him. His eyes narrowed, scanning her top to bottom like she was an order that had come out wrong. "This is staff only," he added, louder now, like volume could substitute for authority. Around him, the sous chef and a line cook exchanged a look, that silent, almost imperceptible smirk people wear when they think the ending is already written. A waitress hovering by the pass leaned closer to the ticket machine, pretending to check orders but clearly listening. Danielle Brooks, though no one here knew that name, let one hand rest lightly on the nude clutch tucked under her arm. Her posture didn't challenge the room, it claimed it. "I know," she said simply. Marco's brows knit tighter. "Then you know you can't be here, whatever you think you're doing." "I'm observing," she said, voice calm enough to cut against the rising tension. From the far corner, a young prep cook, barely 20, hair tucked under a loose cap, lowered his chef's knife and pulled out his phone. His lips moved just enough for the server beside him to hear, "This doesn't feel right." The air changed, not from the heat of the stoves, but from the weight of eyes now on her. Marco took another step, close enough for her to smell the garlic on his breath. "You walk in here, unannounced, critique my menu. That's not happening. So, last time, out." She didn't answer, just adjusted her grip on the clutch. The silk of her dress shifted in the kitchen draft, a faint ripple, like the moment before a wave breaks. "Before we continue," her voice lifted slightly, not for him but for the space. "Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Now, back to Danielle. Marco exhaled through his nose, sharp and dismissive. "Come back when you own the place," he said, turning away. She didn't smile, didn't speak, but in the stillness of her gaze, the kitchen hadn't realized yet the countdown had already begun. The kitchen noise returned, but thinner now, knives hitting boards a little slower. Voices dropped just enough to signal they were listening. Danielle didn't move from the doorway. From a distance, she could have been any diner curious about the inner workings of a fine dining flagship. But there was something about the stillness of her stance, weight balanced evenly, chin lifted just slightly, that made even the flickering heat lamps above the pass seem to hesitate. She let her eyes wander. Not nervously, but like a quiet audit. She noticed the smudge of sauce on a pristine white plate headed for table 14. The uneven sear on the ribeye resting under a strip of foil, the heavy hand of garnish on the new citrus salmon entree. She had approved that dish 2 weeks ago on paper. This was her first time seeing it plated in person, and it didn't look like what she signed off on. From the side, the sous chef, a tall man with sleeves rolled past his elbows, leaned toward Marco. "Want me to get security?" he murmured. Marco shook his head without looking. "I can handle a stray." Danielle's gaze passed over them without pause. She had seen this choreography before 20 years ago, when she was a line cook fresh out of culinary school, and again at 31, when she tried to license her first restaurant concept. The same half smiles, the same assumption that she didn't belong in certain rooms, or in this case, kitchens. She stepped forward, just one pace, the hem of her pink silk dress brushing against the tile. A busboy carrying a tray of glassware stopped short, unsure whether to move around her or wait. She smiled, small, polite, and shifted enough for him to pass. "Can I help you with something?" the sous chef asked finally, voice tinged with the polite hostility of someone who already thought the answer was no. "You could," she said, eyes on the ribeye as the server whisked it away. "But you won't." From the corner, the young prep cook still had his phone in his hand, the camera angled low. He caught the way she spoke, calm even, but with a weight that made the sous chef step back half a pace without realizing it. In the dining room beyond the glass, a couple seated near the chef's counter glanced over. They didn't know her name, but they noticed the way the staff seemed to orbit around her, even in resistance. Marco clapped his hands once, sharp. "All right, back to work, let's get the energy up." He tossed a glance over his shoulder at Danielle. "Or do you need me to personally escort you out?" She let the question hang, eyes steady. Then she looked past him, to the brass plaque on the wall, the one bearing the restaurant's name in looping script. She'd chosen that font, the color of the metal, even the exact placement above the doorway. Marco didn't notice the way her mouth tilted, just slightly, at one corner. Marco closed the gap between them, his heavy steps eating up the few tiles that had kept him comfortably in charge. He stopped just close enough that the heat from the grill still clinging to his apron brushed the cool air around her. "You didn't answer me," he said, voice dropping into something darker. "Do you need me to show you the door?" Danielle's eyes didn't leave his. "Do you need me to tell you how to plate your ribeye?" That earned a muffled snicker from the prep cook in the corner, quickly covered by the clang of a sauté pan. The sous chef's lips tightened. Marco's smile was the kind meant to hide irritation but only managed to sharpen it. He reached out, plucked the folded tasting menu from her hand, the one she'd been quietly holding since she stepped in, and without breaking eye contact, tore it in half. Paper gave way with a dry snap. "This isn't for you," he said, letting the pieces fall to the floor. "Our kitchen doesn't answer to random walk-ins." The pink silk at her waist shifted slightly as she breathed in, slow. A ripple moved through the room, a junior server pausing mid-pour, a busboy freezing halfway through stacking plates. From the far end, the VIP couple at the chef's counter leaned in, sensing the air grow heavier. The woman whispered, "What's going on?" The man just shook his head, eyes fixed on the scene. Danielle crouched, collected the torn halves, and set them neatly on the nearest stainless steel counter, not thrown back at him, not discarded, placed. "I've been in this kitchen before," she said softly, almost like a memory she wasn't sharing with him so much as with herself. "Long before you were here." Marco tilted his head, dismissive. "Congratulations. That and $10 gets you a coffee across the street." The prep cook's phone angled higher now, catching the edge of Marco's smirk. The sous chef stepped forward, arms folded. "We've got health codes. Can't just let anyone stroll in here." "Anyone?" Danielle repeated, eyes cutting to him. "That's right." For a second, silence spread out between them, the kind that feels like the space before glass shatters. In the dining room, a guest shifted in their seat, the scrape of chair legs too loud in the tension. Danielle straightened her spine, her low ponytail catching the kitchen light as she did. "Then maybe you should be sure who you're talking to before you decide where they belong." Marco gave a short laugh, already turning back to the pass. "Come back when you own the place." The young prep cook's thumb froze above his record button, because if he'd known what those words would mean in the next few minutes, he wouldn't have let a single second slip by. The words hung in the heat like steam off a boiling stockpot. "Come back when you own the place." Marco had already turned to bark at the line cooks when he noticed she was still there, not moving, not even pretending to leave. That pause irritated him more than any argument could have. "You deaf?" he asked, loud enough for the prep team to hear. "Doors that way." The sous chef smirked, emboldened. "We're in the middle of service. You're slowing us down." Danielle shifted her clutch from one arm to the other, the silk of her pink dress whispering against itself. "I'm not here to slow you down. I'm here to see if the flagship lives up to its name." Marco scoffed. "Flagship? This is my kitchen, my menu, my standards." He stepped closer, voice pitched low but dripping with disdain. "And you're not on the list. You don't get to critique what you didn't build." That last line drew a couple of soft, incredulous murmurs from the dining side of the glass. One diner pressed her hand to her mouth, another leaned over to whisper to his date. Danielle's gaze didn't flicker. "Didn't build?" Marco turned to the sous chef as if for backup. "See, this is the problem. People think they can walk in from the street, act like they run the place." He looked her up and down in a single sweep that lingered just long enough to be insulting. In a brunch dress. A low laugh rippled from the busboy station. The prep cook stopped recording for a beat, stunned at the blatant dig, then hit record again. Danielle didn't rise to the bait. She simply let the insult hang, like smoke, so everyone could smell it. From the far side, the young server at the pass, the one who'd been pretending to check tickets earlier, finally spoke up. "Chef, maybe." He trailed off under Marco's glare. "Number, we're done." Marco cut in, turning back to her. Security will walk you out, and if you try to step back in here, I'll make sure every fine dining kitchen in this city knows your face. The prep cook's camera caught her reaction. Not shock, not fear, just the kind of calm that reads like a warning. She set her clutch on the counter beside the torn tasting menu, smoothed the front of her dress, and said, "You sure you want to make that your final word?" Marco didn't hesitate. "Positive." The young prep cook whispered under his breath to no one in particular. "He's done." Danielle let the silence stretch until even the hiss of butter on the skillet seemed to fade. Then, with deliberate calm, she reached into the side pocket of her clutch and pulled out a slim phone. No rush, no raised voice, just precision. She tapped a single contact. The line clicked almost instantly. "Renee," she said, her tone steady enough to make the prep cook's recording pick up every syllable. "Activate termination protocol. Pull the franchise file for this location, Marco Vance, head chef. Open the breach of conduct section." A beat of silence on the line, then a crisp voice. "Confirmed, Miss Brooks. Authorization required?" "Yes. My voice. Timestamp this minute. And flag every statement made in the last 5 minutes for legal review." Across the kitchen, Marco chuckled, the sound sharp, defensive. "You calling your Yelp friends? Or maybe some food blogger to cry about the mean chef?" The sous chef smirked like the joke had landed. Danielle didn't look at him. "Also," she continued into the phone, "send the updated menu photos to corporate quality control. I'll want side-by-side comparisons with what I'm seeing right now." "Understood," Renee replied. "Live updates will be sent to your tablet." By now, the dining room beyond the glass had gone noticeably quieter. Guests at the counter leaned forward, watching the exchange like it was part of the evening's entertainment. Marco waved a dismissive hand. "Lady, I don't know what game you're playing, but I've run this kitchen for 5 years without anyone." "That's about to end," Danielle said, still not raising her voice. She glanced briefly at the young prep cook's phone, then back to Marco. "And it's not a game. It's an audit." The sous chef laughed under his breath. "An audit? What, are you from the health department?" "No," she said simply. "Worse." That word landed heavier than it should have. From the pass, the junior server cleared his throat again. "Chef, maybe we—" "Quiet," Marco snapped. "She's nobody." Danielle turned slightly toward the dining room, her rose gold watch catching the light. "Funny," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "I've been called nobody in kitchens before. Those kitchens aren't standing anymore." The prep cook's camera caught the sous chef's expression changed, not a full realization, but the first flicker of doubt. Renee's voice returned in Danielle's ear. "Miss Brooks, the breach file is open. Section 7, C, hostile conduct toward ownership or corporate officers is applicable. Proceed?" Danielle's eyes stayed locked on Marco. "Proceed." "Ugh." Marco crossed his arms, smirk tilting just enough to hide the twitch in his jaw. "Proceed," he repeated, mocking. "You talk like you actually run something." Danielle slipped the phone back into her clutch, then looked directly at him. "I do." The words didn't echo, they landed. Heavy, deliberate. "I'm Danielle Brooks," she said, letting the name hang in the hot kitchen air. "CEO and sole owner of Brooks Dining Group. This restaurant exists because I built it, funded it, and chose you to stand in this kitchen." For a second, nobody moved. The sous chef's arms slowly dropped to his sides. The prep cook's recording wavered, lens tilting as if his hand had forgotten what it was doing. A line cook let a spoon clatter into a saucepan. In the dining room, a fork hit a plate. Someone whispered, "Wait, did she just say?" Another voice answered, "She owns the place." Marco laughed once, sharp and brittle. "Nice try. I've met the owner, and she—" "You've met a contract," Danielle cut in. "One I signed. One I can end." Her voice didn't spike, but the calm inside it was sharper than any shout. The junior server at the pass took a step toward her, almost like siding with her might be contagious. "Miss Brooks!" "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I know," she replied, eyes still locked on Marco. "But he did." "Huh." She tilted her chin toward the sous chef, who suddenly looked like the floor might swallow him. From the corner, the VIP couple shifted forward. The man set down his wine. "That's her," he murmured to his date. "She's the one who turned the group around after the pandemic." The prep cook's recording steadied again, his breath audible in the mic. He was capturing not just a reveal, but the exact moment the balance of the room flipped. Marco tried to recover, straightening his posture. Even if that's true, you have no right to. I have every right, she said, stepping forward so the hem of her pink silk dress caught a stray beam of light from the dining room, including the right to decide who represents my brand. And right now, Marco, you're doing a poor job. The sous chef finally spoke, his voice low. Chef. He didn't finish the sentence. Danielle let the silence eat at him for a heartbeat longer, then turned to the room. Everyone here has just witnessed an employee tell the owner to come back when you own the place. Consider this your notice. I already did. And now, her eyes locked on Marco again, you don't. A ripple went through the staff like the moment before a wave crashes. In the dining room, someone started clapping, slow and deliberate. And Marco, for the first time that night, didn't have anything to say. It started small. The sous chef's eyes darted to the floor, then to the brass plaque on the wall, then back to Danielle, as if trying to piece together how he'd missed it. The line cooked by the grill suddenly remembered the salmon on his station was about to overcook, spun back to it, and almost dropped the tongs. The busboy froze mid-stack, a plate in each hand, unsure whether to keep working or just stand still. In the corner, the prep cook's phone stayed fixed on the scene, but his breathing picked up, ragged through the mic. This wasn't just a TikTok clip anymore. This was a career-ending moment for someone. The junior server at the pass swallowed hard. Miss Brooks, I'm so sorry, I didn't... You didn't know, Danielle said without looking at him, but you do now. So choose your next move wisely. In the dining room, the VIP couple exchanged glances. The man leaned toward the glass, elbows on the counter, whispering to his date. This is the owner. She's shutting him down right here. The woman's eyes widened, her hand coming up to cover her mouth. Marco's smirk had been gone for a while now, but he still stood his ground barely. His jaw clenched hard enough that a muscle twitched under the skin. So what? You're gonna fire me in the middle of service? In front of my team, my guests? Danielle stepped closer, and for the first time, Marco instinctively leaned back. The rose gold watch on her wrist caught the light again, a quiet flash that felt like punctuation. This isn't your team, she said, voice calm, steady. It's mine, and these aren't your guests. They're my guests, which means your mistakes, your arrogance, land on my name. A murmur rippled through the staff. The sous chef shifted his weight, like the kitchen floor had suddenly gone unstable. From somewhere near the fry station, a line cook whispered, She's not kidding. Marco glanced at the sous chef for support, but the man took a step away instead, putting a prep table between them. The busboy finally set his plates down, his eyes flicking from Marco to Danielle and back again. What happens now? He asked, not to anyone in particular. Danielle didn't answer right away. She let the question hang, the tension coiled tighter. Then she said, Now, we clean house. The prep cook's camera caught it all the way the sous chef looked down, the way Marco's face shifted from defiance to calculation, and the way the entire kitchen seemed to collectively realize they were standing on the edge of something final. Danielle didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She reached for her phone again, this time setting it on speaker. Renee, she said, her tone almost conversational. Pull up the master franchise agreement for the Brooks Dining Group. Location code, SFO1. Head chef, Marco Vance. A crisp reply came immediately. Open. Ready for your directive. Section 7. C. Hostile conduct toward ownership or corporate officers, Danielle said. Initiate full termination. Effective immediately. A sharp inhale cut through the kitchen, the sous chef. Marco laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that breaks halfway through. You can't be serious. You're going to blow up a billion-dollar deal over, what, a misunderstanding? Danielle's eyes didn't leave his. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a breach. In the dining room, a fork clinked against porcelain. Someone muttered, She's actually doing it. Authorization confirmed, Renee said through the speaker. Proceed with revoking all access, both digital and on-site. Do it, Danielle replied. Almost instantly, a chime sounded from the kitchen's management tablet mounted on the wall. A red banner appeared. Account access revoked. The screen dimmed. The sous chef stepped back like the tablet had just burned him. From the corner, the prep cook's camera caught Marco's face as he realized the order screens were going dark one by one. The inventory system logged him out. Even his email pinged on his phone, access denied. This is insane, Marco said, turning to his staff as if for backup. "You're just going to let her—" "She's the owner," the junior server said quietly, almost apologetically. Danielle took a step closer, enough that her presence filled the space between them. "You told me to come back when I owned the place," she said evenly. "I already did, and now you don't." The words landed like a closing door. Behind her, the VIP couple began clapping. It started slow, a deliberate rhythm, and spread through the dining room until the sound filled the air. The kitchen, in contrast, stayed silent except for the distant hiss of something forgotten on the grill. Marco's shoulders sagged, but he didn't say another word. The sous chef avoided his eyes entirely. Danielle turned, picked up her clutch, and glanced once more at the brass plaque above the doorway, her plaque, her name. "Renee," she said into the phone, "schedule a site meeting with the transition team. We'll start fresh." "Confirmed," Renee replied. And with that, Danielle walked out, the soft pink silk of her dress trailing the faintest whisper against the tile, leaving behind a kitchen stripped of both its heat and its illusion of control. The door to the kitchen swung shut behind Danielle, but the echo of what had just happened didn't fade. In the dining room, the applause from the VIP couple had turned into low, excited chatter. "That was the owner," someone whispered to their table. "She just fired the head chef right there." Phones began appearing above the soft glow of candles, thumbs moving fast. A hashtag was already forming in someone's Instagram caption. Back in the kitchen, Marco stood rigid, staring at the dimmed management screen like it might turn back on if he willed it hard enough. It didn't. The sous chef pulled off his apron, the motion slow, deliberate. "I'm not getting dragged into this," he muttered, setting it on the counter. The junior server avoided his gaze, focusing instead on clearing plates that didn't need clearing. The prep cook checked his phone. The recording was just over 12 minutes long, crystal clear audio, every word preserved. His finger hovered over the send button to his sister, a journalism student, to his group chat, to the world. He settled on all three. By the time Danielle reached the lobby, 2 guests were already at the host stand, asking if what they'd just seen was real. The hostess, wide-eyed, simply said, "That was Miss Brooks. Yes, it was real." Outside, the city's evening rush wrapped around her taxi's braking, the hum of distant music from a rooftop bar. She stepped onto the sidewalk, the soft pink silk of her dress catching the light from the street lamps, each step unhurried. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Renee's voice came through without preamble. "It's already spreading. Staff from 2 other locations have texted me screenshots. The story's in 3 private hospitality groups." Danielle didn't break stride. "Good. Make sure they see the termination clause, not just the video. This isn't gossip, it's precedent." "Yes, Miss Brooks." In the kitchen she'd left behind, the sous chef finally broke the silence. "What now?" he asked no one in particular. Marco didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the brass plaque above the doorway, the same one Danielle had looked at. For the first time, he seemed to see it for what it really was. Not decoration, but a reminder of ownership. The junior server whispered to the busboy. She wasn't even loud. She just took the whole room without raising her voice. Oh. And somewhere in the dining room, a diner hit post, sending a clip of Danielle's calm, final words out into the stream of endless timelines where, within hours, millions would watch, comment, and share. On the sidewalk, Danielle paused to let a taxi pass. The night air carried the scent of baked bread from a nearby bakery. She breathed it in, then continued walking, knowing the kitchen she'd left behind would never be the same. By the next morning, the city was talking. Coffee shops buzzed with the same story, told in slightly different versions, but always ending the same way. She told him, "I already did, and now you don't." Screens lit up with the video from the prep cook's phone, stitched into reactions, duets, and commentary. The clip had jumped from foodie circles to leadership blogs, from TikTok to LinkedIn. In a corner booth at a downtown cafe, 2 restaurant managers from competing chains watched it in silence. One finally set his phone down. "That's Danielle Brooks. I thought she was just a figurehead." "Not anymore," the other replied. At a produce market across town, a supplier replayed the video for his team between unloading crates of fresh basil. "This is why she's my best client," he said. "She knows every corner of her business. No one can bluff her." Even in the kitchen she'd left behind, the shock still lingered. The sous chef fielded calls from corporate HR, his voice flat, repeating, "Yes, I understand. Yes, I'll cooperate." The junior server scrolled through hundreds of comments under the video, reading them aloud to the busboy. She didn't yell once. That's real power. Imagine firing someone for telling you to come back when you own the place, and then revealing you already do. Soft power in pink. Iconic. Marco stayed off social media, but his name was in every thread, tagged, dissected, and most often criticized. Someone had even pulled an old interview where he'd bragged about running the flagship like I own it. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Meanwhile, Danielle's office phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted statements. Investors wanted reassurances. Franchise owners wanted meetings. Renee stepped into Danielle's glass-walled office, tablet in hand. We've had 5 media requests and 3 unsolicited offers to buy the SF01 location, she said. Also, Forbes called. They want to run a leadership profile. Danielle, seated behind her desk in the same rose gold watch but now in a charcoal suit, didn't look up from reviewing the updated franchise protocols. Decline Forbes for now. I don't do stories in the middle of storms, but schedule meetings with the offers. Let's see who understands the value of my brand. Yes, Miss Brooks. Oh. Through the office window, the skyline gleamed in the late morning sun. Danielle allowed herself a small smile. The city knew her now, not just the name on a plaque, but the person behind it. And she knew the video would outlive the gossip cycle. It would sit in the public memory as a reminder of one thing. Ownership isn't about volume, it's about control. 3 days later, the Brooks Dining Group headquarters conference room was filled to capacity. Franchise owners from across the country sat around the long walnut table, their expressions a mix of curiosity, caution, and calculation. At the head sat Danielle, the same rose gold watch on her wrist, but now paired with a black silk blouse and tailored slacks. She didn't have to raise her hand for silence, it fell on its own as she leaned forward. You've all seen the video, she began, her voice even. Some of you called to congratulate me. Some called to warn me about public perception. And some, her eyes moved down the table, pausing just long enough on 1 or 2 faces, are wondering if it could happen to you. A ripple moved through the room. She tapped a remote, and the large screen behind her lit up with 2 images. On the left, the brass plaque from the SF01 kitchen. On the right, a screenshot from the viral video showing Marco mid-sentence, pointing toward the door. This, she said, nodding to the plaque, is ownership. This, she gestured to Marco, is what happens when you forget it. The words weren't loud, but they carried. From the far end, a franchisee in a navy suit cleared his throat. With respect, Danielle, some of us worry this sends the wrong message that you'll intervene directly instead of letting us handle our own staff. Danielle met his gaze. If your staff is representing my brand, they're my staff. My intervention isn't a threat to your autonomy, it's a guarantee of our standard. Renee, seated to her right, slid a document across the table to each attendee. Effective immediately, Danielle continued, every franchise agreement now includes a personal conduct clause tied directly to ownership respect. Violations are grounds for instant termination, no severance, no arbitration, no exceptions. Murmurs broke out, some uneasy, some approving. She let them talk for a moment before cutting back in. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. Our guests don't see your name above the door, they see mine. That means if one person undermines the dignity of this brand, they undermine all of us, and I will not let that stand. A silence settled, heavier than the murmurs before. At the far end, a younger franchise owner raised her hand slightly. What if we see it happening somewhere else? Not in our location, but in another. Danielle smiled, faint but certain. Then you record it. You send it to me, and I promise you the response will be swift. The meeting ended without applause, but with something better. A room full of people walking out knowing the standard had shifted and that Danielle Brooks would enforce it herself if necessary. That evening, Danielle stood alone on the rooftop terrace of her downtown penthouse. The city stretched beneath her towers of glass and steel, reflecting the last streaks of sunset, streets humming with the early stir of nightlife. She held a glass of still water, condensation beating against her fingers, her rose gold watch catching the final gold of the day. The pink silk dress was gone. Now she wore a soft cream wrap, hair still in the same low ponytail. Power didn't always need a uniform, but dignity was non-negotiable. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her. A notification from Renee. View count just crossed 42 million. Hashtag soft power in pink, trending in 8 countries. Danielle set the glass down, the faint click echoing in the quiet. She opened the video, watching herself step into that kitchen again, the torn menu, the unflinching gaze, the final words. I already did. And now you don't. For a moment, she let the memory replay not for validation, but as a reminder. This wasn't about one chef, one restaurant, or even $1 billion contract. It was about a line in the sand, a message that carried beyond tiled floors and brass plaques. Respect is not optional. Behind her, the sliding door opened. Renee stepped out, holding a folder. It's the revised training protocol, she said. Every new hire will get it on day 1. Danielle nodded, taking the folder. Good. And make sure they understand it's not just a policy, it's culture. Yes, Miss Brooks. Renee left, and Danielle turned back to the skyline. The lights of the city were brighter now, sharp against the deepening blue. Somewhere down there, kitchens were firing orders, servers weaving between tables, guests lifting glasses in toasts. She thought of the brass plaque again, her name, her standard, and the fact that from this day forward, no one working under it could claim they didn't know who she was. A breeze caught the edge of her wrap, and she smiled, not for the cameras or the headlines, but for herself. Because power wasn't in the shouting. It was in the choice to stand still while the room shifted around you. And as the city lights flickered like applause in the distance, Danielle Brooks, Black CEO, owner, and unshakable standard-bearer, knew this was only the beginning.